The scene was electric. Maduro stood before a massive crowd, his voice amplified across the capital of Caracas. With raised fist, he declared that Venezuela must become an armed republic. For his supporters, these were words of defiance and resilience. For his critics, they were a chilling sign of what could come next. But what does it mean to call for an armed republic? And why now, at this moment in Venezuela's history, does Maduro want every citizen to prepare for battle? To understand this, we need to rewind the clock. Venezuela's relationship with the United States has been rocky for decades. The U.S. once enjoyed strong ties with Caracas, especially when Venezuela's oil flowed freely to American markets. But over time, political shifts, the rise of Hugo and later Maduro, transformed the nation into a sharp critic of Washington. Tensions escalated as the United States accused the Venezuelan government of authoritarianism and corruption. In return, Caracas accused Washington of meddling in its internal affairs. Then came the sanctions, harsh economic restrictions targeting Venezuela's oil industry, its financial system, and many of its top leaders. For an economy that relies almost entirely on oil, the sanctions were devastating. Hyperinflation skyrocketed, shortages of basic goods deepened, and millions of Venezuelans fled the country in search of stability. Against this backdrop, Maduro's vow to create an armed republic takes on new meaning. It is more than a slogan. It is a political survival strategy. By promising to train and mobilize ordinary citizens into militias, Maduro sends two powerful messages. First, to the Venezuelan people, that he is their protector against foreign invasion, and second, to the United States, that any attempt to intervene will be met with nationwide resistance. The idea is not entirely new. Venezuela already has what is called the Bolivarian Militia, civilian defense force created under Hugo, numbering hundreds of thousands of members. Officially, their role is to support the armed forces in times of crisis. Unofficially, critics argue, they function as an extension of the government's grip on power, ready to suppress protests and counter political opposition. But Maduro's vision goes further. He imagines millions of Venezuelans, not just a militia, but the population at large, armed, trained, and ready. Supporters see it as a patriotic shield. Detractors see it as a dangerous gamble. Consider the risks. Venezuela is a country already scarred by political division. Protests have often turned violent. Opposition figures claim that weapons in civilian hands would be used not for national defense, but for silencing dissent. The fear is real. In a nation struggling with hunger, economic collapse, and mistrust of institutions, injecting more weapons into society could ignite chaos rather than protect sovereignty. Yet Maduro's rhetoric resonates with some. He frames it as a fight against imperialism, a continuation of his legacy, the liberator who fought to free South America from colonial powers. By invoking history, Maduro places himself in a long tradition of leaders who equate survival with resistance. Internationally, the vow also serves another purpose. Venezuela is not standing alone. Over the years, Caracas has built ties with Russia, Iran, China, and other states critical of U.S. dominance. For these allies, Venezuela's defiance is useful. It demonstrates that America's influence in Latin America can be challenged. An armed republic in Venezuela, therefore, becomes more than a local issue. It becomes part of the broader geopolitical contest. But can Venezuela actually achieve this vision? The country's economy remains in shambles. Hyperinflation has eaten away at wages, and public services are under strain. Training and arming millions of people requires resources, discipline, and organization that Venezuela might not currently possess. Some analysts believe Maduro's words are more symbolic than practical, a way to energize supporters, rather than an actual plan to militarize every citizen. Still, the symbolism alone has power. For the United States, such rhetoric complicates the already delicate balance. Washington must calculate carefully. Too much pressure on Venezuela risks feeding Maduro's narrative of resistance against imperial aggression. Too little, and critics argue that the U.S. ignores authoritarian abuses. The image of an armed republic becomes part of that political chess game. The Venezuelan people, however, remain at the heart of the story. For many, the daily reality is not geopolitics, but survival. Finding food, medicine, and security in a country where millions have already left. Then the promise of an armed republic may feel distant compared to the struggle of daily life. And yet, history shows that when leaders speak in such dramatic terms, the consequences often ripple outward. What begins as rhetoric can harden into policy. What is framed as defense can transform into repression. What is meant to project strength can, under the wrong conditions, fracture a society further. So we are left with questions. Is Venezuela truly on the path to becoming an armed state, where every citizen is a soldier? Or is this just political theater, another chapter in the long saga of US-Venezuelan confrontation? Perhaps the answer lies somewhere in between. Maduro's words may never fully materialize, but they shape perceptions, rally loyalists, remind the world that Venezuela's crisis is far from over. And in the high-stakes game of geopolitics, sometimes perception is as powerful as reality. In the end, the vow of an armed republic is both a warning and a performance. It warns external rivals not to underestimate Venezuela's will to resist, and it performs strength for internal audiences desperate for stability. Whether it succeeds or fails, one thing is certain: the world will be watching. And the echoes of these words will continue to shape the destiny of a nation caught between crisis and defiance.